Na 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 Let's make as much room as we can. One more chair. One more. Oh, there's one. Yes, I my Ezri, my will come from the one we call Ayn, he's beyond any concept that we have. We don't want to grab God and make him in our image. We want to open ourselves up to that which is beyond. So Ayn means literally no thingness, beyond boundaries, beyond conception. Then it comes Havaya as Im Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke Yud, into Hey, into Hey, comes down, and we can actually, we have instrumentation to tell us, I've just been helped. Something happened. We register events, we register inner events and outer events. When we become a little bit adept at feeling that there's somebody behind whatever just happened to me. So that's a step up. That's what all brachot are supposed to give us, is that a bracha tells me it's not to take an action or whatever, or something for granted. Baruch atah Hashem, Yotzer HaMeorot. You're the one who forms the luminaries. The luminaries, both the physical luminaries, the stars and the planets, and also the spiritual luminaries, the sphirot. You form them in accord with our awareness of you. You make them larger and allow them to contain more of your light and reveal more of your light. You make them smaller and constrict them when we're not there. So our awareness is a barometer, or our awareness activity to it's really hot in here.
Yeah, it's hot.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
We can open it.
All right.
Turn the heating.
We can turn the heating off. Can we do that? How do we do that? Turn off the heat. Because it's all of us have heat. So we don't need the ad nihit. Is there a control? It's right behind you on the bookshelf. It's behind you on the bookshelf, Talia. And also, I want to ask you, what's your name? You who are sitting directly in front of me, what is your name? You look at me. What's your name? Ari. I have to ask your forgiveness. Talia, who's sitting behind you, that's it. And not chas v'shalom, I wouldn't do that to anybody. But I would like you to be able to find another place, maybe even behind. Is there a room behind here?
Could the men take a bit more of the...
No, we can't.
Can we pull the table and give them more space?
Pull the table and give the men more space.
I know.
Usually it's overloaded with the women, so okay. Really, Ari, sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Oh, that's better. Come on here.
Okay, so what I was trying to say is awareness is a very important part of reality. Sensitivity to what's going on around us and inside of us. And we need help to do that. We're not taught that in our society. We know how we feel, but there's nuances, right? And basically the spiritual path is a sensitivity to somebody who created us, who cares for us, and who we're in relationship with. It's not just this. It's not a mechanistic universe. It's not just a technical Kabbalistic universe of olamot and sfirot and all that. It's with different names, because those different names represent different relationships that it has with us. It's not any of those. It just uses those as vehicles, as modality through which to interact with us, but really it's beyond all that. So it's important for us to connect to that which is beyond all form. That is behind all form. And then in order to do that, we connect with our own essence, which is behind all the form that we are. And the more we can do that, the more we can do that, the more we can do that. The inside, the outside begin to work in tandem with each other. A little bit not normal to say these things, but it just came to me based on the concept that God is called Ein. Okay, last week we attempted to begin to speak about Moshe. Moshe as a person, Moshe as the development of Moshe as a powerful force in the world, an embodiment of consciousness that's called Dat, quality of Hashem himself, part of his plan for creation. And Moshe, who we say was privileged to give the Torah, he was privileged to bring us to higher levels than that had ever been attained by anybody before him. And until Mashiach, nobody after him. So Moshe Rabbeinu is this amazing character. We're going to devote a few weeks, continuing to speak about Moshe. The Zohar says that the Mashiach ben David and the Mashiach ben Yosef are the right and left hands of Moshe. Moshe, together with the Mashiach ben David at his right, Mashiach ben Yosef at his, constitute a unified power force called Mashiach. And the Eliyahu Navi, just like in the story of Eliyahu Navi in the Nach, when he meditates and it rains after 3 years. He's on top of Mount Carmel. It's a very powerful experience. And after that, he tells Achab, who is his Ahab, go down Jericho from Haifa. and tell her something. Okay, so Eliyahu actually runs in front of the chariot. I always consider it as like, well, how do like one? Like very amazing. So anyway, Eliyahu Navi runs in front of the Mashiach triad.
Sutton.
Yeah.
I think that Moshe is less accessible character to us than like the Avos. I always feel like he's a lot less, we know less about him. Do you know what I mean? Like there's less details. A lot of his life's in the Medrash, and it's not like in, do you know?
He's an Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov,
He's less known.
but we are going to see that there's a lot known about him in the time, and if I don't have time in the class, then I'll develop it in my writing. This is a jumping point for a lot about Moshe. The deepest Torahs that we have from Moshe. And it's locked up in all kinds of places in the Zohar and the Talmud, the Midrashim. And so,
it's been locked. Is there like is there significance?
So I'm into unlocking, and that's what we're going to try and do today a little bit. We're going to go into a text from Rabbi Nachman. The text that I have, I think we're going to have, it's here on the pages that I'm going to give you. I didn't give you yet. There's a beautiful piece in the Tanya about the inner level of Moshe and who he is inside each one of us. And I would like to do that. I want to give it to you. It's in Hebrew and in English. And then after is a Torah from Rabbi Nachman, a very difficult Torah, but I'm trying to make it that you can get something from it. And following that is a whole thing about the opposite of Moshe. What's the counter force, the contra force that tries to usurp Moshe inside? We said that it's Paro. We said that he has to face off Paro because Paro is his nemesis. It's a famous thing that in order for the hero to become fully who he is, he has to face off against that power which is opposite him and transform it. Not just kill it, but to transform it and to reclaim the issue that it has. What? What's a nemesis? Enemy, contraforce.
Was it complicated because he was like raised by Pharaoh and Pharaoh took care of him as a kid? And somehow it'd be harder to fight against him because he did owe him such a way of gratitude?
Yes and no. Would it be harder to fight against Pharaoh? He grew up in the palace. Yes, and it's maybe, I can see your point, but no, because the Ibn Ezra makes a very strong point that it had to be somebody who grew up in the palace. It could not be one of the people who grew up as a slave. He had to be familiar with palace life and not be intimidated by going into the palace. All the other Zakenim on the way in, with him and Aaron, they all disappeared on the way in because it was like, this is scary. This is something we've never done before. So Moshe has to be able to go in there and face him.
Also, the making is that Moshe was turning it. He helped him to sugar, which he did, as we know from the story of Jonah. So he wasn't fighting against him as such. He was actually in certain respects.
We know from Jonah the Chazal that the king of Nineveh was Paro. Or at least the Gilgul of Paro, and that he did tshuva. There is something to that. In a sense, on the other hand, Paro remains Paro until the final messianic, like, so to speak, showdown. Not simple, I would say. It's a good point, excellent point.
But you were saying he was turning it, part of it.
So the point is to turn him, right?
So Paro is also the Nachash as well.
And my own inner Paro, and my own inner Nachash, and all the different names, all the negative forces. We're going to see a little bit of that today. Also mentioned from the beginning that if whether we get to the sources or not and have them, that sexuality plays a huge part in preventing a person or wrongly used sexuality, diverted sexual, instead of having it within the kedusha of holiness. It's a very big test in our generation. Somebody sent me, a dear friend of mine, psychologist in Argentina, the only one who's not a Freudian there. And so he sent me an article and I looked at the first paragraph and I stopped and I wrote to him and said, I can't read this. It was an interview with a young who had been exposed to porno at the age of 12. And the article in the New York Times was porn because it was describing that experience. So for me, even as a married man, that's not what I need. So I wrote to him and said I didn't want to get past the first paragraph. This is every day in the office with tens, we're being exposed to the most powerful force in the world, perhaps, in terms of the human psychology, and it's causing havoc in people's lives. And they're like, wow, what's that about? How do we have anything that's powerful enough to come against that? I was talking yesterday to Mordechai. There's a way of going up above all the arguments about who's right and who has the right, and liberals, and this, and religious, and secular. Going above all that, as Mashiach will have to go above all that and use a language that will be able to understand things in a much deeper way. And there won't be any need for people to, well, I'll say it this way, need to find that language which goes above, which is a higher level of consciousness, in which is there's nobody to argue with. It just becomes clear what a healthy, wholesome life is, and that mankind is in a very difficult stage at the end of Western civilization, where there's a self-destruct part of civilization is self-destruct. People believe that they have to do things, which if you look at it objectively, it's like, what are you doing? How are you acting? Look at the anger of the demonstrations. Look at the people's faces. Look at the word delegitimize, right? Nothing is legitimate except what we believe in, right? Very, very difficult issues dealing with here. And the idea came up that Paro has perfected his system. He makes everybody feel that they're totally free, and he has more power over them than ever before. It's like perfect. They think they're totally free, and they're more controlled than ever before. The more controlled they are, the more freer they think they are. So we have to get out of that dynamic and understand what the force of Paro is.
The whole internet, everything, discovering now that people think that they're freely accessing information. And actually, they're being more controlled than ever before because all the algorithms, everything, it's like it's a total parallel to that.
Yeah, so whatever I'm going to say here is not meant to put anybody in a guilt trip. Guilt doesn't help anybody. On self-transformation, we want to take that whatever we've done, any of us, individually or collectively, and become more powerful, more alive, and more mature, and more powerful as who we are, and not have our energy drained off. And live in an illusion. So with that being said, for those of you who weren't here, so the psychology of the soul, the idea that there's 3 stories in Noah's Ark. And there's 3 sons that Noah gave birth to. So the connection was that behind the storyline, behind the narrative of the Torah, to say that there's 3 sons and 3 stories means that there's something telling us something about ourselves. Each one of us is an embodiment, is a miniature, a microcosm of mankind. We have a Shem, a Yefet, and a Ham. We have a lower level of our ark, middle level of our ark. We have a higher level of our ark. And what?
So again, okay.
So that model becomes based on three that eventually ends up in the Mishkan, in the Mikdash, the outer courtyard of the Mikdash, corresponding to our digestive tract and our sexual desires, the inner sanctuary of the Mikdash and the Mishkan, where there's the menorah over here and the table and the incense altar. Now inside, they're protected by the rib cage, the inner internal vital organs, the heart, the lungs, the diaphragm, and then there's this big curtain, and you go into the Holy of Holies, and there's an Ark of the Covenant there. Inside the Ark of the Covenant are two tablets of the Covenant, plus the broken tablets. And then there's these keruvim, these winged creatures that are there, spreading their wings out, which is like the brain when it's unfolded. And Hashem speaks to Moshe between the space between the keruvim. They're almost kissing. They're facing each other, and they're also. And so the word of the infinite comes into the finite, into time, into space-time, exactly in the space between the keruvim, in the space between the two hemispheres of our brain. So that's the model we're using, that we're internalizing and mapping the Torah onto ourselves. We added and said that when Moshe is born in, that corresponds to our lower part of our body, coming up to the foot of Sinai and see burning bush and having his experience at the burning bush. We ended with that last week. We said that the walls of the bush and that the light of Hashem, light that permeates the walls, surrounds the walls, and permeates the whole room, that we can get into a place where we can actually experience that, and the walls disappear, and we know that we're in the infinite. And then afterwards, the walls come back and everything, and the walls come into the foreground, and the light goes back and fades into the background, right? But what we want to be able to do is to act that inside experience where the light becomes the foreground and the walls become the background. That's where we ended off a little bit last week, and that when Hashem said to him, Moshe, Moshe, he took him out of his body. That's the meaning of taking off his shoes, and he was zapped, he was electrified by the higher level of his own soul coming down into him full force, transformed him. So he had that experience for 7 days. It's a famous thing. And then he was told, go back to Egypt. And Moshe said, nothing doing, not going back. No, Moshe, I did this to you so that you could go back to Paro and face him and bring the children of Israel that he has entrapped there and enslaved there and in bondage there, which are the emotions and our own inner powers, which are entrapped by Paro, because he plays their music, and he has very strong strobe lights to keep us occupied with building Egypt. So that thing is going back down into Egypt, bringing the children of Israel to the foot of Sinai and giving us the experience of leaving our bodies 10 times as Hashem spoke. Every time he spoke, we left our bodies. So the model of the Torah, for me, has become very real, very strong. And again, it's connected to the very way we're built. So take that in for a second. And if there are any questions, feel them, but
how's that?
First take it in for a second. It's kind of overwhelming, okay. But it's really an attempt to put a lot together into a very coherent package called us. And that all together, we also all have the 3 levels. We all have the access to the higher levels, actually the 2 levels plus the 3. And there's a 5-level system, and we have access to that. And when we speak about these things and we learn about these things and we take them into our lives and integrate them, then what we're trying to do is lift our lives up to that next higher level. So 1 minute of silence for all of us, myself, and just to be able to have that come in. Connect to your breath, connect to your vital organs. And put your hands on your stomach or on your chest. Those to really connect to those parts of us where we live. Breathing in, oxygenating through the lungs and bringing oxygen into the brain. Closing your eyes, if you want, closing your eyes tightly and wrinkling your forehead. These are simple but profound ways of getting into a deeper place inside yourself. You can see lights, you can see, but the point is that you're in your physical body and you're embodying it completely. That's the optimum way to learn Torah, to daven, to be aware of in this body. Then the other worries and the problems that we have fall away, at least temporarily. The future, the past, come into the present. So, yes.
That's when God's Mount Sinai, that our souls leaves out of bodies 10 times. Is there more you can explain about that? So in the Apostle, it says after the second.
The Gemara.
Right.
Yeah, it's the Talmud. I have it in my book on Shavuot. I don't have it here. It's a delightful little piece in the Gemara in Shabbat. I'm a Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. With every dibur that came forth from the mouth of the Holy One, of course he doesn't have a mouth, but it's metaphorical. Our souls left our, it says in the verse, my soul left, my soul departed at his word when he spoke. So, and not just once, but every time, then he had to revive us and resuscitate us and resurrect us. And he did it for reasons known to him that had to be a very unique experience that was not ever to be forgotten. It's engraved in us that we transcended physicality together, 1.5 million people together. And it goes back to Moshe's having had that experience when he was called Moshe. And it goes back to when he was in Egypt on Leil Pesach at midnight. Something happened to all of us then. It goes back even further to his first time that he was able to do a certain thing in Paro's palace. I'm not sure I shared all of this with you. I shared it in New York with people. But I have all, if anybody has any questions about any of it, we're trying to learn about the development of Moshe as Rabbi, as a prophet, and paralleling that, something about what we can do by seeing this progression that he did do for Am Yisrael, and saying, hey, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to have that experience. Yes, I want you to have the experience. Then you say, well, why haven't I had it till now? So because the time wasn't right and people are not teaching it in that way. But now is the time that level of Torah observant is being open to us. The Baal Shem Tov, the Ramchal, and all the others are in Shemayim, telling us that their Torahs now can come, the experiences that made them who they were can now come into our generation in the most powerful way, which will then give us the ability to overcome Paro in every aspect of Paro without even a finger. It's like we only feel that we're put down under the rule of Paro because we feel that we're like, what could we possibly do against such a power? But with the power of the Moshe, of Yosef, of David, of Eliyahu, of all these incredible souls. So it's a big Torah that I'm trying to give over, but that's again, the offer was to provide written material for anybody who's interested in any particular question. Next, yes. Your name, Moshe?
Yeah,
Moshe.
About the left and right brain and the kerubim that correspond to it. When you're trying to close your eyes and focus down on that center point, the pineal, and allow the light to come through, when you get stopped by like a void, where it's just blackness, where it's just light, how do you go deeper than that instead of being prevented by the void?
Moshe. Your name isn't Moshe for nothing. Okay. Cohen. Okay. How can I answer that? The void and the white darkness, and how can you not get stopped at a certain point? Every time you get stopped by something, every meditation has. So you let go. You stop trying. That's one general klal gadol, right? But I don't know. We'd have to see something. If you're enough so much that you can speak that language. So I need to speak to you, only about what you do and how you do it and where you get it from. And just talk and learn and talk, and let's see what we can learn from each other. I don't have an answer of what you do when you get blocked. I'm constantly getting blocked, and I'm constantly giving up and asking Hashem to help me. Ezri Me'im Adonai. I say Shamayim Ba'aretz. He makes space-time. I get stuck in space-time. I connect with He who is above space-time. How do I do that? Fine. The concept is there. The model is there. Yes.
Never give up because I'm actually going to job tomorrow. So
you have to what?
I said never give up because I actually have a job tomorrow and I actually have a home to live in where I don't have to have an issue, even though it's
Baruch Hashem.
It's me and Shimon and someone looking for myself.
Be thankful. Be thankful for the good.
Isn't getting stuck, isn't that the para?
So resistance to spiritual advancement is part and parcel of any growth. It's a beautiful piece bring down from the Baal Shem Tov on these type of things. Right now, I want to take us. I'll try and answer this type of thing, but in the flow of what I want to share with you. Anybody else in the meantime?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes.
I want to know. It looks like there is some degrees of reading the Torah that deals with our physiology, with how it works our body, and more than that, all these coming up down from Eretz Israel down to Goshen to Mitzrayim, they're going up again in freedom through the Sinai. Something is happening, as you said, in our body. And I couldn't get this until something happened that I started to say, I have to work for me, for myself even, to change myself before changing something outside. So, and I started to realize with other rabbis, I say, mitzvahs, I'm not doing it for Hashem. I mean, something that I have to change myself. This is a great point. So about the Am Israel that comes out of Eretz from Mitzrayim, is there a connection with actually what you said at the beginning? I felt very strong this connection that we have to save the seed. It's so easy to say, but it's very difficult to do. It's something that we really need to do in our life. Like I talk about the counterpart, how is it? And to use it for in a kedusha, in a family, with a wife, as well, to give birth to a new soul. That's it. And we are not able. Maybe I'm talking about myself, so it's just like a kind of this is what it needs to do. If you do this, and Rabbi Nachman stresses it a lot, we have to save the seed. Save the seed. It's so easy in a way, but it's very. It's hidden in all these messages, metaphors. But this is Yosef Atzadik, that's what he did. And Yosef is in sword. So bring up again the to so
excellent point.
It's a physical point of view, but
yeah, appreciation that the human physiology is a temple, and that the male seed are life, their life itself, the miracle. So again, I said at the beginning, I'm going to try and speak about these things, but in a way that's not going to make anybody feel that they're a low life. We are all higher souls who have come into this lifetime, and whatever mistakes we've made, and whatever our particular challenges are, then we can download a higher level of soul, which will help us, and we'll still have to struggle, and want to grow and mature and do what's good, and we still might make mistakes, but our life on what kedusha is, holiness is, sanctity is, what elevation of ourselves is what I wanted to speak about. To do that, I wanted to go into the negative that counteracts against Moshe. We'll start with Rabbi Nachman. It could be we could start anywhere and go anywhere. I'm trying to do my best. I have 30 of these, so let's pass them out. I think there's more than enough.
Again, the question.
The question, yes.
Struck by the irony, and it came out when we began tonight's session. The irony is my God. That was just and beautiful and mutual and giving and sacred and leads to the birth of children. It's become, like, you think, the most powerful, gorgeous thing, and it seems to become the biggest clobber. It's like the thing that has the most holiness becomes a tool of the greatest degradation, and it's like totally ironic. So it saps the energy, like steals the energy from something beautiful to turn it into something ugly and horrible and degrading.
Right. So that's what we're being attacked with. So we have to understand what this force is and the ability to transform it. I mean, my process I prepared. This is going to be tested now. What can we do? Rabbi Nachman. Not an easy Torah, as I said. Let me just go through it. You somewhat superficially. It's translated Hebrew and it's translated into English. The bottom of page 2. Tefillin on one's head are Ochin, which is the higher internal levels of consciousness. Tefillin on one's head. Tefillin. The idea, especially two pairs. I've been privileged to wear two, Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam here, and us and Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam on my arm. Again, most people do only one, or if at all, they do one at a time, this Rashi, and then they take them off at a certain point and put on Rabbeinu Tam. There's all kinds of variables, and those who only put on Rashi, and there's women who have put on tefillin and have found it's very far out to do that. There's no isur, there's no prohibition. It should never become a political issue. It's an inner thing. It should be done alone without anybody knowing it. But then most women I've seen who've done it, do it and then say, I've had enough, do it anymore. I'm very able to do it, but I don't need to do it. It's not. When you take something on, it becomes an obligation.
Why is that on two? Why Rashi and Rabbi Nutan?
A good question, Rashi ben Utan, but right now the answer that I'm going to go for was that each one of us was given 2 crowns of light on Mount Sinai. And this is a Gemara in Shabbat, 88, 89. 2 crowns, one for Nas, one for Nishma. The angel and gave us a crown when we said, yes, we want to do it. And gave us 2 crowns of light, and they're called Edi, Ediyim. And so it says, after the sin of the golden calf, Edyam mihar Horeb, that we removed the ornaments, which are the crowns of light that had been given us at Mount Horeb. We removed them. We no longer have. Instead, we got leather boxes. And the play on words here in leather in Hebrew is or with an ayin vav resh. What we had before that, we had or with an aleph. We had or with an aleph vav resh is light. the golden calf, which is a calf, which has skin, which is the hide of a calf, tefillin are made out of. We now have tefillin made out of skin. And our job is to transform skin into light. But not just as a bunch of, the tefillin is an external expression of something. So Rabbi Nachman says that the tefillin on one's head are a sparkling of the higher consciousness that is accessible to Am Yisrael and to mankind. But the tefillin are a physical embodiment and an externalization, a technology of an inner technology. It's for this reason that tefillin are called yakar, precious, honor, honorableness. As our rabbis have said on the verse, the Yudim had aura, light, and simcha, gladness, and sasson, joy, and yakar, honor. That yakar alludes to for tefillin, meaning to say not the tefillin on top of the head, which is the acquisition of higher level of consciousness. That's the tefillin. He has now made a equivalent. The tefillin are an externalization or external embodiment of something that's internal, called the higher level of consciousness, called mochin. So now when he's saying tefillin, he means the inner level. For tefillin, that is to say, the acquisition of higher levels of consciousness are the result of rectifying the illicit, which is adultery, which is in direct contrast to verse Eshet Ish Nefesh Yekara Tatsud, the desire of the adulteress, the feminine aspect of the Sitra Achra, of Paro, etc. The desire of the adulteress is to trap a precious soul. So there's almost a world that wants to bring this more for men, but women have their own tests. So just make the analogy to yourselves. All of us have a tikkun of sexuality that goes all the way back to Adam Arishon and Chava. But the power of the adulteress, which is a spiritual concept, a feminine aspect of spiritual concept, we'll see more of that in the pages to come, its desire is for the precious soul. And the word precious soul in Hebrew is nefesh yakara. So yakar of tefillin is contrasted to nefesh yakara, to the precious soul that's being sued, that's being trapped and imprisoned by the adulteress. So it's a spiritual dynamic we're talking about here, not easy to talk about. And he goes on. The main thing he just did is he says that tefillin is an embodiment of a spiritual concept called mochin, and it's called yakar. And once you have yakar, which he's going to show at the end is called Moshe, once you have yakar, then you have the ability to counteract the force that tries to usurp and to co-opt that and bring it down. For instance, in a man and also in a woman, we don't, it's not necessarily physiological, but the brain, right? The brain matter comes down through the spine, that as the library of each one of us, of the male and the female, of the father and the mother. The library of the Chochmah, Bina, and Dat of the father is in his seat. The library of the mommy, who she is, and all of her Chochmah, Bina, and Dat come down into her womb, and they become embodied in her seed, or her ovary.
Women are created with all that in them when they come. It's a different thing because they come in.
Okay, differences. Viva la difference, whatever. But the point is that the two libraries meet. Physical form, X and Y's, but of Alephs and Eins. And Eins. Aleph, which is or, with an Aleph, Ein. What?
It's like spiritual DNA. The DNA comes down that gives you size. Like it's like it sounded like a spiritual DNA that comes down.
Yeah, because we didn't have the microscopes 1,000, 2,000 years ago. We had a spiritual science that the brain matter is the stuff of which the seed is made. And there's this library, right? And these two libraries meet to create this incredible baby. So he's told us here that Sorry for making it so hard.
Beautiful.
But whatever. I won't even say what he said to us. That's what he said. Then he goes on and says, tefillin are also called pe'er, glory, splendor. And there's like a note at the bottom of where that's coming from. For they're the result of rectifying gava, which is ego, in hitparut, self-glorification, which is generated in unworthy leaders when Gentiles convert. What does he mean? I have to go into Torah itself where he's talking about this. I give you the source here, and you can see in the English where Rabbi Kramer explains this, but he does say it has to do with the self-glorification when an unworthy leader takes an ego gratification from bringing people into Judaism, and it becomes an ego trip, and it's the opposite of true pe'er, true beauty and true splendor. So again, Rabbi Nachman is into juxtaposing opposites, because he says that hitpa'arut is the word pe'er in it. Pe'er, in its positive sense, is glorification of God. L'fa'er et borenu, to glorify God. Hitpa'arut is glorification of self. So again, he's opposing two things here. This is the meaning of Moshe Hayaro. He skips now almost out of nowhere. And it's certainly within the total Torah that he's talking here. It makes sense, but in this little piece here, it's like almost a surprise. Where'd Moshe come from? Moshe Hayaro. Moshe was a shepherd. Moshe embodies Dat, which is consciousness, which is mochin, which again we said is of his higher consciousness that is embodied in its tefillin. Moshe embodies that. He's the shepherd of kedusha, of holiness, the opposite of ro'eh zonot, the one who keeps company with harlots. Again, you see the word ro'eh, which is used in another context in sexuality, and Moshe is the opposite. So in each case, the three cases that he's brought, two words, three different pairs of words, where the one is a higher consciousness, the other one is that which tries to undermine. And it works, and he gave us three examples. And I end off with the idea being that the true leader of the Jewish people shepherds and tends to them, whereas an unworthy leader keeps company with harlots. That is to say, he increases their desire for immorality, which is the opposite. An unworthy leader. There's something in the news now, I don't really want to go into it, and Dai Levine, somebody who it's coming out, people who are in positions of power, who are teachers, who have hundreds of students, and many of them are women, and these men are being exposed, and they're going to continue to be exposed until it's all over. Sadly enough, it has to happen. The men are going to be exposed for doing the wrong thing. The unworthy leaders are going to be exposed, who have taken and distorted the true teachings, made themselves into demigods. It's happening in the news right now, I'm sorry to say. Okay, so that's Rabbi Nachman. But the point is the standoff between these two forces, which is in Judaism. God won. It's not God against the devil in Judaism. It's God above and man against the devil. And man has to transform this negative force by confronting it. But without Hashem's help, without access, or without not the word is not access, something in Hebrew, siyata d'shmaya, without help from heaven, from Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, right? Without that, we are in a position to be these powers that are all around us that are trying to bring us down and bring civilization. And the Jewish people are very, very, it's in our genes that we've seen civilizations end. And what Hashem wants from us is not to kill the civilization. He doesn't want us to, one of my our backlash against Nazi Germany and Germany in general, with their music and their culture, was only because we were directly hurt. But that's not really the way we want to relate to the nations of the world. Our job is not to put them down, not to denigrate them, not to mock them, but to elevate mankind. Not to say, bankrupt, you're worth nothing, but to find the good and to elevate. He'll raise up biology, he'll raise up psychology, he'll raise up every single science that we have. He'll raise up Christianity, he'll raise up Buddhism, he'll bring them all into alignment with the highest truth. He's not going to mevatel, he's not going to nullify, he's not going to say, you're nothing, you're out of it. No, you have truth in you. Let's build on that truth. Let's build you into a complete system that reflects the truth in a more perfect way.
I can't see you. Can you go ahead?
So I'm obviously trying to do much too much, but you understand. But even we get it completely. Neither do I. But we get that we're trying to come into to understand what's happening in our lives individually and in our lives collectively. That there's forces at work, and then when we know that there's a plan that's unfolding, it's called a messianic plan towards a very powerful set of things that are going to happen. So you have to understand that what's happening now is a preparation for us to start to get clear on what needs to be done. And of course, we need divine assistance for it. And that's the call, that's the name of the game. That's the call of the hour. We need your help. We need to call down the power of the great masters who lived in the past, our ancestors, our moms and our dads who were there in the past. And we need their power, their soul power, their awareness that they worked on, their inner, and then instead of saying, what did they leave us? And all that they did, like, look at the world, it's so dark. What did Moshe do? Instead of saying that, which feels like they gave us like 0.001% of something, but 99.99% of it's completely unrectified. What did they do? Instead of saying that, we get connected to them that they fixed 99.999% of the inner work, and that what we see in front of us is 0.001 of reality. And in a blink of an eye, it can be changed when we have access of the power of the spiritual tikkun that they've done already. So it changes, it turns the tables over from what did they do, what did they leave for us, look what they did, nothing, to they did so much. In Chabad, they say that the crown is red, that the pearl to be shined. The crown is almost ready. All of mankind's work to what God wanted to do, it's almost all done. All the pnimiyut has been done. The world has been left with the chitzoniyut, the external level of the world, which to us at first sight seems like overwhelming. You get connected to the inner, to the tree of life, so the tables get turned. Okay. Next, page 3. Rebbe Nachman's story, Strange Children, is a masterpiece. Anybody never heard of the story? You haven't heard of it? It's a must read. It's called in Hebrew, Ben HaMelech Shenichlefu. The son of the king and the son of the maidservant were exchanged. And in English, the exchanged children. In other words, it's before Mark Twain. No, but it was an existing motif in mythology from back when. And so both Rabbi Nachman in his way and Mark Twain later in his way took it So what am I going to do here? I can and take our time, and whatever we don't read, you can take home and come back you'll become samurai warriors by next week by having read this. You'll come back into class and we will have the 99.999% that we needed. By Nachman's story of the exchanged children, the son of the king and the son of the maidservant. On the meta-historical level, Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden are the king's son. Well, the Nachash, the serpent, the snake, obviously the sneak, embodies the Sitra Achra, the side of otherness, the force or system of evil which uses false subterfuge to fool human beings and draw them down into sin. As a result of Adam's sin, mankind loses the clarity of objective godly truth and instead lives largely in a world of falsehood, which the Torah calls Etz Hadat Tov Hara, the tree of knowing or joining good and evil, where everything becomes mixed, joined, and you can't tell what's what anymore. And Cherav HaMitapechet, the revolving sword, it's always changing, in which Kabbalistic tradition calls Heichalei Atot, the palaces of exchanges, which I'll go into shortly. So what happened to us is we dropped down a level as a result of Adam and Eve doing what they did. We live in a lower dimensionality now. We look at higher level of Or with an Aleph, and we got Or with an Ein, a physical world that blocks us. Now, the spiritual reality of God's light and truth is still there behind the scenes. But it's hidden now just enough to create the illusion that God is not there. Thus, if we imagine the Torah as a play or a movie, which I always, and it really is, it's really written like that. The first scene ends and the curtain falls right after Adam and Eve are banished from Eden. The rest of the time, how to get back in. Or you can add and say that Adam in the Garden of Eden was connected to all of creation, to God. He was in a total amazing state. And in the Gemara in Yevamot 63, it says that he had relations with every animal in order to know its name. So the so-called literal commentaries say, don't take it literally. The Kabbalists say he was mind. He went into every creature to know its essence, its DNA, and came up. But it's called in metaphor that he had relations with that creature. And he was looking for a man to find one. And Hashem put him to sleep after that and gave him from within. All that whole stuff is the point here is that he had connection with everything, but he lacked something which is his connection with himself. He didn't have a good, strong sense of self. And so he's outside of Eden, he has himself. But he's now with that incredible connection that he had to the entirety of creation. And the Torah is how to get back what you had with the self. Right? That's just a little addition here that's behind the scenes of these sentences. To get back into the Garden of Eden, which is connection with all of creation, with myself. Similarly, after the opening scene in which the infants are exchanged, the opening scene of Rabbi Nachman's story, in which the infants are exchanged, more about the story in a second, the remainder of Rabbi Nachman's tale contains the secret of how to overcome the force of fall and darkness, and thereby return to the truth of God's existence. Rabbi Nachman also reveals how the soul finally assumes its true status as king, which then opens the way for the personality, its soul as beloved friend, confidant, and servant of the soul. So the two children are Yaakov and Esav, where the son of the king gets switched to servant, and the son of the maidservant gets switched to the king, and the son of the maidservant grows up as a prince and eventually becomes king. The king goes up as a servant, and at one point, the what do you call it? The one who the birther,
Midwife.
not the doula, the midwife said something, and the rumor goes around, and everybody's talking about it under their breath. This thing was and it gets back to the king, the false king. And he says, this is bad. If he's the real king, I'm not the king. I'm going to make his life miserable. And it gets to the real king, who's now the son of the servant, and his life is being miserable, made miserable by the false king. And he says, if I'm the real king, I don't deserve this. And if I'm not the real king, I don't deserve this either. And the contradiction, just he can't live with it. So eventually he runs away, and he starts going to brothels and bars. He drinks. He can't handle if I'm not the king, then I don't deserve this. And if I am the king, I don't deserve this. And so Rabbi Nachman's saying that it goes into the story of Esav and Yaakov. I won't go there right now, but you can fill the blanks. Mordechai and Haman, and the soul and the body is what we're going to do now. The body is being given the position of king, and the soul has been given the position of servant. And the rest of the story is about how the relationship is rectified and brought into its perfection. Because what happens when the body takes over, it wants to kill the soul because it's threatened. But when the soul takes over, the soul becomes the willing and beloved servant that wants and is doing what it should be doing vis-a-vis the soul. The sign of a proper relationship is when one is not trying to hurt the other. When one is trying to hurt the other, then you see something is wrong here. Why do you want to stamp out the good? Why do you want to stamp out the morality? Why do you want to stamp out traditional morality? Well, what's wrong with it? The family. The family is a very, very important core concept. Read Jonathan Sachs. The guy's written as a very important voice in the Jewish world. He's writing about values, and he's doing it in a way that people of all religions are seeing the tremendous wisdom of the Torah. Read Jonathan. I don't agree with him at everything, but whatever. The guy's an important voice right now. Values, morality. What's wrong with morality? What's wrong with the push? Why is there an agenda, a paid agenda, with millions of dollars of additional family, and to make new forms? What's going on here? So that's just a parenthesis, just to make trouble for you guys. Okay, so we see that Rabbi Nachman reveals how the soul finally assumes its true status as king, which then opens the way for the personality, the physical body, to its true beloved friend, confidant, and servant of the soul. In the meantime, as a result of the original exchange, the soul, who's the true king, is subjugated by the personality, the physical body. So it's a profound model of how to look at every one of his stories. It's just amazing. Now,
Thank you.
and that was very. I didn't know how I was going to do that. And yet, a drink.
Isn't the exchange children also kind of us daily life? A lot of the pain, the distraction and things we do is because we've sort of like given up on being able to truly connect. So you just you give up and you just do all these other things to take you out of that sort of pain that we're not even necessarily conscious of.
Food addictions,
all these things.
Sex addictions, and other kinds of addictions of giving in and saying, I can't fight this anymore. I just, anybody can, many of us probably in this room can be spokesman for that kind of thing that happens to us, giving up on ourselves, unworthy. This is too hard. This Jewish stuff or whatever, any of this stuff, it's too hard. And making excuses and rationalization. The problem with it is that at least sometimes, I'm sure you'll admit, is the thing that we do in order to feel better about ourselves backfires. and we feel so icky.
So I want to say something.
Yes.
Magic. And the OU, I had no idea where I was even going. The OU took us to Dan Panorama, my voice. Dan Panorama Eilat for 5 days. And it was junk. When you go to them, like Hashem gives us answers, a way of getting out. Like you have this, who actually brings us into something we think, wow, it's something worth living for. And when you go to Eilat, to this thing with the OU, call them and see. It's unbelievable.
Okay. So this gets into now this very, very interesting thing called Heichalei Timurot. It's part of my book called The World of Infinite Blessings, and it's on the bracha that we say in the morning, Hanoten lasech vibina lahavchin ben yom uven laila, and the ability to distinguish between night and day, between day and night. And then when we lose that ability, is because there are forces that are trying to, which we called before the tree of joining good and evil, of the intermixture, and not knowing what's really right. Okay, so let me just share a little bit of this with you. I build a book should be built up, but it's not necessarily what should be done in a class. So, in that sense, if I were learning it in Hebrew, I would use the text as a stepping stone, as a jumping off point to read what's in the text and then talk. So even though it's not Hebrew, that's basically what I'm going to do. And as I said, we're not. I would like you to take it. I would like you to read it. I'd like you to digest it. I'd like you to say to me, Avraham, I need more context here. I need the whole chapter. I want to know what's going on here. I need more information, and I will say, that's really great. I will give it. So let's start in the few minutes that we have. I think we're not even going to get through this whole paragraph. Maybe we will, but no more. Repeatedly throughout his commentary on the story of the exchanged children, Rabbi Natan, so Rabbi Natan vis-a-vis Rabbi Nachman is who? His main Talmid, the one who wrote down most everything that we have from Rabbi Nachman. Certainly the extension and the development of the written Torah is by Rabbi Natan's writing. Much of which was checked Rabbi Nachman, and then afterwards it continued on after Rabbi Nachman passed away. So throughout his commentary on this story, Rabbi Natan, as he's called in Yiddish, mentions the idea of Heichalei Timurot, the palaces of exchanges. These are not palaces or physical sense, but rather spiritual and psychological. Citing the verse in Ecclesiastes, Gam et ze leumat ze asa Elokim. God has kissed one, that is to say, light, truth, wisdom, and goodness, parallel to the other, that is to say, darkness, good, folly, and evil. He has made a world of dichotomies. He, again, as he said, stands over the dichotomies, and he puts us in a world of dichotomies. And he wants us, with his help, accessing and downloading the higher power oneness, able to transform and to take the energy of the negative and to reclaim it back into the positive. So, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero explains that Hashem constructed the world on the basis of a cosmological law of parallelism. According to this law, just as there are 10 sfirot and 7 heichalot, 7 palaces of holiness, there are 10 sfirot and 7 hechalot of impurity. Temurot is just one of the names that our tradition gives to the domain of evil, the negative side. As it calls it, Etz Hadat Tov V'Ra, the tree of joining good and evil. The Cherev HaMitapechet, the revolving sword, the sword of reversals. Other names are Sitra Achra, the side of otherness, the flip side of reality, the realm of evil. Adam B'Liya'al, man without a yoke, the heaven. Imker Klipot, the depths of the shells. Sheol, the netherworld. Hechalei Tuma, the chambers of impurity. And Sheva Medurei Gehinam, 7 levels of hell. The source is here for all that. There are also various names for the force of or forces that inhabit the realm of evil. In the Torah, this force is metaphorically called Nachash, snake. Within man's psyche, it's called Yetzer Hara, evil urge or evil inclination, or inner adversary. Metaphysically, it's called Satan, the heavenly accuser, and Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. In the Zohar and Midrashim, it's also called Sam, or Samech Mem. Each name represents a different aspect of its manifold functions, different faces of the same character, as the Talmud states. So I see we have gone beyond what I thought, but it's very important to see the different names and not get caught in any one model. These models are important when we put them all together and we see a greater truth emerge. So Judaism is a formidable system because it constantly changes names. But if you have some key to how to put it all together and to know that what you're on when you're using a particular name, so then you have a tremendous advantage. And some people like some names better, and some people don't like some names at all. It's very much a issue of personal taste sometimes. Or sometimes a particular name or word it's used is not good for you, but the more you learn about it, the more you understand why they use that name too. Whatever the case, what we're trying to do is to give ourselves the advantage of seeing the system in its totality. So there's this famous Gemara in Baba Batra, which is footnote number 7. The Yetzer Hara is none other than the Satan. That is to say, the inner force within us is none other than the heavenly accuser above. As the Satan, the heavenly accuser, is none other than the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. As the God comes down into a person's thoughts to tempt him to sin. As the Satan, the heavenly accuser, it ascends to heaven to accuse. As the Malach HaMavet, it descends to take a person's soul.
So if we didn't know Yetzer Hara, would there be no death in the world?
There'd be no. It's a good question. If there would be no Yetzer Hara, there would be no death. It's a fascinating thing because it goes back to a verse in the end of chapter 1 of Genesis where it says, "Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa b'tov ma'od." And God saw all that he had done, the totality of everything that he had made, and he said, "Behold, it was very good." So the Midrash has a very radical Midrash. Midrash is very radical. So the Midrash says, Tov is good, Tov Mod is evil. Tov is Malach HaChaim, Tov Mod Malach HaMavet. Tov, very good, is the angel. And it just keeps going like pairs of pairs. That which is good, that which is very good. Well, wait a second, what are you talking about? How can you call evil and death very good? So one answer is that the key is the word kol. Kol asher asa. When he saw all, the totality of all that he had made, he said evil is a very good force ultimately within the total context of creation. It's very important that mankind have that fight against him because that gives him the ability to accrue merit. And even if he falls, to come back, because he has a life that way. Without a Yetzer Hara, there not only would not be death, it wouldn't be a real life. So that's my answer to you. But God bless you. This room, this Rabbi brought, Judy, this yeshiva, this space. This holy of holies, this chair, you, wherever all of us are coming from, this cosmic moment, this way of being within a space and feeling that our lives are greater than most people know about what life is about. That's a gift. Sam, or Samech Mem, is short for Samael. We don't usually say the whole name. It's the angel of death, the personification of evil. The Hebrew root Sam, or Sam, means a potion and also means blindness. Somebody who's blind is misameta anayim, is to blind the eyes. While the suffix el means that it receives its power from God. This yields two ways of understanding this name: poison of God, or potion, or right of God, and the one who blinds people and thereby prevents. One way or the other, advisable not to pronounce the name as it is written. So we say Sam or Samech Mem. Sam rides upon the Nachash. It uses it to further his purposes, and I bring the source. In this sense, the Zohar says, Sam is the masculine aspect of evil, while Nachash is its feminine aspect, which itself has different names. Isha Zara is the strange, the forbidden woman. Isha Zona, the harlot. Isha Me'anet Mena'efet, the adulteress. Eshet Nunim, the wife of vulgarity, of lewdness. Erva, promiscuity. And Lil, short for Lilith. Clearly, all these names of the feminine aspect of evil carry a sexual connotation. But because we're talking about a spiritual force, this goes beyond normal sexual attraction. It goes beyond even normal sexual transgressions. Ultimately, it involves the sin of wasting seed, whether due to a deliberate act of masturbation or homosexual relations, or in normal heterosexual relations when accompanied by crude involvements, or in certain instances due to criminal emission. Because this is already going beyond what, right, I'll stop here. Crazy. When I do stop here is read it, take it in. The word sin is a problem for many of us. Chet in English, chet in Hebrew is to err, E-R-R. Is lachti matara, is to miss the mark, is to go off course, to veer, err. Sin, not a good word. I use it here freely, but it's only because of where it's coming from in the Hebrew that we make mistakes. But consciousness, which is Moshe, which is the downloading of the higher consciousness that Hashem is making available to us through the tree of life, gives us the ability to see our life in a greater context, in a greater way, and to begin to rectify, to make functional as opposed to dysfunctional. So that's the name of the game here, and that's why I bring these things to you. This is a course on human development, right? But what it is, it's locked up in the Torah and all these antiquated terms and stories. So what I'm trying to do is to show that there's a deep psychological system here, but you have to do the work of bringing it out and bringing it up here so we can talk about it, and then get it in a language that we can understand and get the power of the ideas and start to say, oh, that's what Judaism is about. Field trip, it's not this, it's not that. It's a development of the human personality and consciousness to its highest level of potential. So enough for now. We'll sing a song. It's going to be with all of us. We're, say that again? No, I don't know if it's, we'll just see. It's just simple. The tune that the Adon Olam is one of my favorite songs. The tune that I sing to it is from Baghdad. It makes a little, so try and move along with me, even if you don't have the book in front of you of the words of Adon Olam. But it starts out with Hashem being Adon Olam, the master of the world, which is 207 is Gematria Ein Sof and Gematria Adon Olam. The master of the world who hides in his world is the same Gematria as he in whose presence there's no world. So he is the Ein, he's the Ein Sof, but he also is the master who hides in his world. It's two aspects of transcendence and immanence. It's also the gematria of light, or with an aleph, and of raz, mystery. The mystery in physics is the mystery of light. Is light particles or waves? A wave, which is Ein Sof, or is he particles? Is he something that he made? He's both, obviously. He transforms waves into particles and makes a universe. He transforms particles into waves. There's no universe. So Adon Olam is just this amazing, amazing word. Adon Olam, resonate with it. Adon Olam, Hashem Alach, V'tem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Nasa, V'chepso Kol, Azai Melech, Shemo Mikra, Azai Melech, Shemo Nikra. You can hum along if you don't know the words. Ve'acharei kiklot hakol levado imloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu ove ve'hu yeh Tifara Vehu Yeh Tifara Vehu Echad Ve'en Sheni Lahamshilo Ulahachbira Bili Reshit Bili Tachlit Velo Ha'oz V'Hamisra Velo Ha'oz V'Hamisra Ve'u'ei Na-na-na-na-na V'chayko Ali Be'tzochem li Ve'etzara Ve'unisi Umanos li Menat kosi B'yom ekad Menat kosi B'yom ekad Be'yato Mafkid ruhi B'dishan Me'ayira Be'im ruhi Geviati Adonai li Velo yira Hashem li Velo yira. Okay, thank you so much. Please put your emails down. 30 shekels for the yeshiva. Write to me if you want to have any interaction on Abraham dot Sutton Sutton at iPod.com.
Like,